We are excited to have you here today. My name is Amy Robinson, and we want to welcome you to this program of the University of Arkansas Small Business Technology and Development Center. We are so pleased to be able to bring you these educational programs to help support small businesses. We want you to be advised that just like posted in the chat, we will be recording this conversation for ASB TDC education purposes. As a registrant and an attendee of this conversation, you will be emailed a copy of said recording and any links or information that we post in the chat today. I will introduce Nikki momentarily, but first I'd like to introduce us and tell you a little bit about ASB TDC. I'm Amy Robinson again, and specialty consultant with the Small Business Development Center. And I'm here with my fellow consultant and co-host, Chris Case. Chris, say hello. And if you don't know about the Small Business Development Center, it is a one-stop shop for startups and existing small businesses. We are associated with the University of Arkansas and affiliated with the SBA and statewide ASB TDC, as well as a national network of more than 1,000 small business centers. Locally, we offer complimentary one-on-one consulting programs like this one, and we cover relevant topics for business owners. And if you are not already a client, we encourage you to visit us at sbtdc.uark.edu. We provide everything from business planning to marketing to financial assistance. So please reach out to us and say hello. I'm going to go ahead and pop off this share screen. And Chris, can you tell us a little bit about how we're going to do things today?
I sure will. So today we're bringing you our lunch break series, and we're talking with Nikki Toth again, one of our favorite people to talk to. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say. We're going to be talking about using photos to increase brand awareness. So we love, and I've said this a million times, but this format is awesome. We love it because it gives all of us an opportunity to talk and feel like we're right there in front of each other. Plus it gives us an opportunity to talk with Nikki and all the experts about all of our questions and maybe even challenges that our small businesses might be feeling right now. So this is an interactive hour. We're encouraging you to ask questions as we go along. You can post your questions in chat. You can raise your hand, but we just ask you to stay on mute until you have a question. We will also leave time at the end to make sure that we answer all of your questions, so you can even wait till the end or ask them as we go along. But please be very interactive and ask away. She has all the answers.
Yes, no formal presentations today. We do have some formal presentations from Nikki in the past. So if you go to the sbtdc.uark.edu website, we can post that in the chat, or you can find some of her programs from the past. And we do love a good conversation. So with our resident photo expert, Nikki. Nikki Toth is a professional photographer for small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and families. She's been doing that for about 6 years, about to roll over into 7, even though this whole year seems like it's been 5 years. So we'll just say she's been doing it for 10 years. Her professional style is to capture the true essence of her subjects, and she wants to help you capture the same in your business. So while we take a few moments to get to know Nikki, we would love to get to know you as well. So if you want to post in the chat to everyone, or just to me or Chris, if you want to stay on the down low, and let us know what industry you're in. And if you already have some specific questions that you'd like to talk with Nikki about, we will call on you, or we'll see it in the chat, or you can answer each other in the chat if you want to. Feel free to share any information that you have as well. And if you don't want to talk and you just want to send it to me or Chris, we will ask the question for you, no problem. So Chris, we have Nikki here today because of all of the information that she's been giving us. So tell us a little bit about the topic today, and I'll pinch hit with you on that.
Okay, well, like Amy said, we're going to be able to ask questions about brands and kind of how those two correlate together. And I think, Nikki, a lot of times the questions are always coming up about, what do we do to make sure our brand sticks out? What do we do to make sure it's personalized? And so I know, Amy, she's going to talk. We have questions. You and I have a lot of questions for her that we want to ask, but she's going to be just filling in all the blanks for us with brand and your photography.
Yeah. So aligning your photos with your brand is kind of something that's come up really consistently. And just to frame it up a little bit, you know, the foundation of your brand is your logo, your website, packaging for your promotional materials. And I feel like the best way that we describe it to our clients is it creates the feeling of your business. Like, what do people feel when they go to your website, when they go to your social media? You know, are you bold and creative, or are you organized and grounded? And if people go from your website to your Instagram, are they having the same experience? So if you have a corporate feel to your website and then a creative feel to your Instagram, you create what is called, for proper reasons, brand confusion, and that leaves people feeling confused. So we want to work with Nikki today to kind of help ease some of those things, and also how to, so being consistent and some of those things, some of those tips. So let's kick it off. So Nikki, if you would love to tell us about why this keeps coming up in photography of all places, what your experiences are, and maybe some examples that you have of some work that you've done with some clients.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to be back today. I thank you guys for having me back. This is a topic that I love to talk about. And I'm definitely, I want to give the caveat that I am not a brand expert. My feeling is that photography can really help to add another layer to that brand awareness. So it can't replace it. You can't come in without having a brand created for your business and try to use photography to create one. But I think that it is a very, it's great at adding another layer to your brand out there. I think that when we talk about creating the feeling of your business, I think that photography is fantastic, a tool to do that. I think that photography can elicit feelings that really nothing else can. And so I think that when you have a good awareness of what your brand is and what you want to communicate to your customers, then I think that it's not a far putt to be able to create photographs that mirror that brand and help to just communicate it a little bit more effectively. So I'm excited to dive into some questions today and talk about that.
Absolutely.
Well, and we have a couple different industries too. So we've got the dental lab that we've talked to before. And we also have Karen, this is a different industry, but she's from economic development from the Rogers Lowell Chamber of Commerce. And so it's going to be kind of a little bit of, you know, how do they promote, because they've been around for a long time. And so they've kind of cast an image and a feeling, you know, so how do you help someone that has been around and maybe wants to tweak their brand or their, and I know you're not a brand expert, but with photography, but tweak their through photography to kind of maybe update it or to appeal to a different audience. What do you do in those cases?
I think that my recommendation for the first step would be to literally make a shot list. I would think through, okay, this is where we want to tweak our brand. This may be where we want to change our message slightly, and literally write out what you want your messages to be. And then think through ways that you could visually communicate those messages to your audience. And I'm trying to think about some examples. There may be, maybe somebody could give some examples. Oh, I'm sorry. Magazines flying behind me. People, if you had an example of a message that you wanted to communicate, maybe you could post that in the chat and we could talk about that specifically. So for me, that's the most logical first step, is to think through, okay, this is the message I want to communicate. How could I communicate that visually? And then perhaps look at it from different elements of your business. So you may want to communicate that message visually and include your customers, or you may want to communicate that message visually and try like some behind the scenes pictures, or perhaps you want to communicate that message visually by taking some specific product shots. And even within that category of product shots, you may want what I refer to as product headshots, which are really literally just the product. But then you may also want that product kind of in use or alive, where it is literally being used by, excuse me, the consumer. And so you can take those sorts of pictures where the product is still highlighted, but it has a human element to it. So that would be to me the most logical first step would be to create that shot list. I mean, I create shot lists before most of my sessions. Just even if I don't pull them out during the session, just writing them down helps me to think through, what do I want to make sure I capture in this session, whether it's a session for a small business or a session for a family. I want to make sure that I'm showing if it's for a family, the connection between the mother and the new baby. Maybe I want to make sure I capture their hands touching, or even like tiny little details like that, because to me, those types of different shots really come together to create that storytelling image. So, so start with a shot list, maybe.
I love that one. I love that you said story, because that's really, brand is telling a story and communicating something, which is fantastic. And so a better way to do that than through pictures. And the other thing I love about you that we've experienced is just you give everybody real good organizational tips, like how to be organized and consistent when it comes to some of these things. So one of the questions that I know we come up a lot when it comes to photographs and social media, or even other digital. This is not just for social media. You can use photos on your website and in your print. I don't know who prints anymore, but somebody somewhere does. And so photos, if you're taking them yourself, could definitely be used like that. So I'm wondering what, if you've pre-thought all of these things, how do you suggest people make things seem authentic while you're being very organized and basically methodical? Where is the, and I know that your photography seems very natural, even though you just said, like, you've got a plan when you go in to do that. So where does that come in, and how can that be accomplished?
That's a good question. Authenticity is something that that I've kind of gone back and forth about over the course of my career. When I first started shooting families and businesses, I felt like I wasn't being authentic if I set up a shot, or if I saw somebody do something fantastic and I asked them to do it again. Like, I felt like that felt very inauthentic to me, as though I was like a National Geographic photographer and I had to capture everything, which I'm not. But I think that the authenticity, it's helpful if you are shooting proactively as opposed to reactively. And I'll explain that a little bit. I have struggled myself with feeling pressure if it's Thursday and I need a shot because I need to post something. I haven't posted anything in 11 days and the clock's ticking in my head and I need to stay relevant. And so to me, in those situations, that's when I come up with the most inauthentic pictures, because I am trying to set something up in the moment. So my recommendation to everyone is to shoot proactively. And so what I mean by that is to create that shot list that we talked about, and then take it a little bit further. Maybe if you weren't here for the earlier workshops that we did on things like lighting and composition and perspective, maybe go back and watch those, or find just information about different types of composition and using perspective to change your message. And so what I try to do is recommend pairing an element of your message, like we talked about a minute ago, the messages that you want to communicate, with a type of perspective or organization for your picture, composition technique for your picture, and pair them. So you may say, I really want to communicate, excellence to I want to communicate excellence to my customer. So I'm going to try to pair that with a different type of composition technique than I've ever used before, and really just spend 5 or 10 minutes a day practicing. So there's no pressure. You don't have to create a picture for a post. And in my opinion, that release of that pressure helps to create, it allows you to be more creative, and it gives a more authentic image, because you're using different creative compositions, and you're looking at those messages that you're trying to communicate to your audience. I think that we get into trouble when we're feeling time crunched and we don't have a picture that we need. And so when you create this variety of images, you can create your own portfolio and keep it organized. It's part of that organizational strategy, is that you shoot proactively and then you edit your pictures right away. So you're only saving edited pictures, and then you organize them. So you may have edited pictures that are of customer interaction, or edited pictures that are of behind the scenes types of shots of your business, or edited pictures of perhaps yourself and all of your employees, because you want to do a series on get to know us sorts of shots. And then another edited picture, a folder of edited product shots, that sort of a thing. So it helps, I think, take the pressure off. And I think that it's that pressure that helps, that we end up creating images that don't look like ourselves, and they don't feel like us, and they just feel forced. And so I think that when we try to take 5 or 10 minutes out of our day to shoot and work on that portfolio, it helps with that. So.
Well, before I ask my next question, I wanted to pause for just a second and see if anybody wants to ask a question. Just unmute yourself and you can just ask away.
Scott, can we put you on the spot since you've been here a couple times?
He's like, I'm never coming back again.
Something that you had just alluded to about editing on the spot. I was just thinking, in my situation, I'm the alpha and the omega and everything in between. So everything starts and stops with me. And I don't always have time to do that. And I have to put them off to do later. Typically, I forget about them until I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I meant to do something with that shot, or, you know, and I'm not quite sure how to do that, because my goal is to have a presence on social media, even though I don't have a great following or anything like that, but that's the way it starts. It's got to start somewhere and build up. I don't want to be all about my product. You know, I want to throw in some personal in there, but that's the part I don't know about. The product is easy to come by, but the personal, and to help that build a brand or create a brand. And I guess maybe I just don't understand what the brand is. You know what I mean? In my mind, the brand has always been the Coke symbol. You know, that's the brand to me, not the backstory on the Coke or anything else that goes along with that. And how do you capture that brand in photographs to bring it forward to tell your story, since I'm still kind of starting out my story and writing it as we go. So
we recently, and not to interrupt Nikki on that, I think that is one of the biggest things that we're learning through this year, is that that personal side of business, especially small businesses, is one of the greatest things that's come from, you know, this really not so great year. And so, yeah, please help us bring that to life, Nikki.
Well, I'm going to address the beginning of your question first, because I think that I heard two questions there. So first you talked about editing and how it feels a little overwhelming to try to do that, or like there's not time. And I would encourage you to, I can't remember if you were at the editing workshop or not, but we talk at the end, and we ran out of time. But when I say we, I mean me, which happens every time. I'm gonna have to secure a little more time from now on. But I think that we talked about during that workshop that most of businesses and people in general have a pretty routine day. We have a routine to most of our days, is what I'm trying to say. And so thus you will have a routine to most of the pictures that you're taking. And especially, I think if the majority of your pictures are set in your lab, then you're going to have, 2 or 3 lighting situations that are always going to be the same. And you can create in the app that we talked about during the workshop, the editing workshop, which is called Lightroom. It's the Lightroom mobile editing app. You can create your own preset, which means that you take one of the standard pictures, which may be a type of picture that you're going to take often, which in your case may be like a product shot. So you may set up, and in another workshop, we talked about setting up a light box, which would be also very helpful in your situation because you have small products that you're going to want to shoot probably inside or near a window. So you're going to have a pretty constant lighting situation and setup for your product shots. So you can edit one of them and then you can create a preset and you can name that preset, you know, product headshots or whatever you want to name it. And that would be something that would just be a one-click edit from then on. There may be a little bit of tweaking you need to do here or there, but for the most part, any shot that's taken in that same lighting situation would just be a one-click edit. So I think that creating your own presets based on your specific location, types of shots that you take commonly, that sort of a thing, as opposed to using filters which are not customized for you. Filters tend to look very overwhelming and heavy, and I just don't recommend using those, but you can create your own preset simply enough, and then it really helps with your editing simplicity.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm trying to hide something if I use a filter. It's trying to hide an imperfection or something I don't want to come through. So that's what I'm trying to stay away from.
Absolutely. And I think especially in your situation, you want to show your products as close to the way they look in reality as possible. You don't want them to have a strange color hint, you know, tint to them or anything, which most filters do. But I think with some really simple editing, you can really whiten the background and really, you know, brighten the picture so that it looks the way that you want it to look in person. Because sometimes even with our best intentions, our images don't look exactly like they do in real life. And so, so I think in your situation, really clean, very simple, no, you know, you're not trying to do anything fancy with your editing, but I think a little bit of editing will help anyway. And then you can really simplify that with your own customized presets, and then save it automatically into one of those categories so that on next Thursday, when you need a social media post and you want it to be about a product shot, then you can go straight to that folder and find the product shot really quickly. So, so that's kind of my thought about creating the simplicity in the editing process. As far as like creating your brand itself, I think you mentioned Coke, and whenever I think about the logo itself, I think is just a part of its brand. And again, I can't speak to that, to the way that you would think through how you would create your own brand. But when I think about Coke, I think about, you know, fun and active and, you know, all these things that they want us to think about Coke, which may not actually be the reality of Coke, but I think that they've done a really good job of creating this brand, you know, of like people are out having parties and everybody's social and it's this big, you know, it's usually a very social sort of a situation when you're drinking the Coke.
It is and they do various campaigns, but you'll notice a lot of it is people smiling, laughing, having fun, cheers, you know, all of those things. And I think that there is definitely a story that goes behind it. For sure, I think that one of the things that if you know, this journey has done nothing but bring you to like, I need to work on my brand, that's great too. We're happy to help you with that. I think it is very important. And, you know, we also have someone on here who is a senior and just working on building her brand. And, you know, I think, Nikki, sometimes photography is a good way to explore that, because you're kind of seeing, you know, you're seeing things, your products or your services or something through a lens, literally, that your customer might see. And so, you know, brand is a combination of who you are, what you are now, and then an aspirational kind of, you know, what you want people to feel about your brand. And so, I think it would be great to, yeah, anybody on here, we can work with you on your brand, or maybe Chris, we need to add it to our set list for, for 2021 for sure. And I'm wondering a little bit about, so you talked about the, and I'm kind of wondering for the people on here, so exploring your brand via photography, maybe it could be a good way to explore how to develop that. But you talked a little bit about filters. So if we're looking at like a chamber of commerce, obviously taking a lot of photos in a lot of people settings with different light, different activity, you're outside, you're inside, you've got all of these things going on. What are some brand specific things that people can do to kind of help manage that? Because, you know, when you go on Instagram and you see things in, you know, something might be really bold and bright, something might be kind of soft and faded, you just kind of zone out a little bit. So is there a way to help make it consistent without making it flat or boring? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good question, especially for something like a chamber of commerce where, like you mentioned, you're going to be shooting lots of other businesses. So you're going to be capturing their brand. And then how do you communicate yours through those pictures of other people's brand? This is like a layered,
right.
deep question. But I think that a couple of things pop into my mind when I hear that question. And the first thing is, I think editing. I think your editing is going to stay specific, whether you're shooting a super bright, you know, frozen yogurt shop that's got like orange and all different bright colors, or you're shooting a dentist's office that may be very subdued, calming, sort of a spa-like atmosphere. I think that your editing can stay consistent no matter what. I think that you as the photographer are going to have a specific voice. And so I think that the types of, in that situation, if you're thinking through, okay, how am I going to manage all these different businesses that I shoot? I think one strategy could be that you always take the same 3 shots at each business. So let's say you always take a landscape shot of the exterior of the business. You always take an action shot of somebody inside the business doing what they do. And then you always take a headshot of somebody, the owner or the manager or whomever of the business. And so those just 3 examples of types of pictures that you could take of that business. And perhaps for every business that you highlight on your social media feed, you do where you have a picture and we'll post. And then perhaps you use some sort of app like Canva where you could create a template using the same font that is your Chamber of Commerce font that overlays the picture and, you know, gives a quick, you know, like a little introduction or whatever of the business, whatever types of information should be on that type of shot. So you could have a post for each new business that you are presenting to the city, but use the same format for each image, or for each post, if that makes sense. So you could do like you could do like a little slideshow in each post so that there's some variety there, but the consistency of using the same types of shots for each business and using the same font that your Chamber of Commerce uses, and the same, and you could put your logo on the beginning of each one of those posts. That sort of a thing will help the person who's scrolling through their social media feed immediately identify this as a Chamber of Commerce post. And if they have a particular interest in the Chamber of Commerce, that's going to slow them down, and they're going to say, oh, here's a new business that's opening, or somebody did a ribbon cutting or something. And they're going to take the time to slow their scroll a little bit and recognize your post, if that makes sense. So I think that though your subject matter could change dramatically and the look of the businesses will change dramatically, those types of things could be consistent in your treatment of those images, if that makes sense.
Great suggestion. I feel like we need to have like a picture of you and slow your scroll like underneath it, because it's a great visual of how
That's
quickly
all we want, right?
Yes, exactly. How quickly we go through social media and then we go, oh, wait, there's that.
Absolutely. I wanted to go back to like the third kind of thing that I noticed from, and I'm sorry, is it Mike at the dental office? Scott, okay, I'm terrible, I'm sorry. No, the other thing that I heard you say is that you're the only, like you're the beginning and the end and you're it there. And are you literally the only person who works in the lab? Okay, so I would recommend taking a little bit of time and practicing some selfies. I know I hate that word and it's probably a horrible idea immediately, but I think, I'm not talking about like where you hold the arm out, you hold your arm out with the camera. I mean, like get a little tripod that you could set on the counter and you could take pictures of yourself working. Because I think that if you are the one who is making the product and you are the one who's interacting with the customers, they would love to see that. And so I think if there's no one else there to take pictures of you, then you have to learn to take pictures of yourself. And literally I'm like looking behind you, just set it on the counter, shooting down the counter, and figure out the settings on your phone to have it take a burst of pictures after 10 or 15 seconds so you can get yourself set, and take some pictures of yourself behind the scenes, and then use your same editing treatment and get those pictures up there so they can see you making these products. So
yes, talking about yourself is one of the hardest things that solopreneurs, sole proprietors have to deal with, for sure. And I would say the other thing that kind of leads to is, so Scott, that the cost of a little tripod, Amazon, whatever, if you can buy it local, go for it. Maybe what is the photography? Why am I blanking on it? There's a photography store. Which one?
Over on College in Fayetteville. Okay.
Yeah. Bedford.
Right, Bedford. That's what it is. I knew it started with B. But it's really a small investment, and it really could be useful. Did you have something to say about that, Scott?
No, I have one.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I have one. I used it a lot in the beginning and was hypercritical of myself, and it's collecting dust over here off to the side. So
well, I'm looking behind you and I see like the light that's coming, that you have, like the light under the counter light or the under shelf lighting that you have there. That could be really cool. Like I think that you could use that and make some really cool pictures. Like you could turn off the fluorescent light that's above your head and just leave that under shelf lighting on, and it could make some really cool pictures. I mean, I think the lighting would be really great. And I agree, like taking pictures of myself is I don't even do it. Like I'm telling you to do something that I never ever do. But I mean, I'll like get my 15-year-old outside to take pictures of me before I'll try to take pictures of myself. But I mean, if you got to do what you got to do, right? You got to get some pictures of yourself up there. So, and there are lots of tutorials. Like it's more than we have time to talk about that today, but you can go on YouTube and find some pretty good tutorials on how to take self-portraits that don't make you cringe.
That's a good one. Well, we definitely want to, again, to reiterate, Chris, if you all have questions, feel free to unmute. This is our lunch break format. So we usually only go about 45 minutes, and we don't want to cut anybody off from any of their specific questions. Obviously, Nikki is happy to engage with you directly. If you have a very specific question about you or your business or photography, tell us about what camera you have so that Nikki can tell you use your phone.
Absolutely.
Well, and Nikki, that was one of the best tips that I think you gave, because we had a question, what kind of camera do I go buy? And they were getting ready to drop some pretty big money on that. And you said, what was your answer? I'm gonna let you answer that because it was good.
I highly recommend, I mean, unless you want to take pictures for the joy of taking pictures, which I, support completely. If you are looking for a tool to take photographs for your business for social media, or any other online use, I think a good phone is really the best investment, because the pictures that these newer phones take are really fantastic. They're really powerful. They've got lots of features in them. And it will dramatically reduce your workflow, as opposed to shooting on a camera and then having to transfer it onto your computer to edit, and then having to transfer it onto your phone to manipulate or do anything with. I think that a good new phone is a better investment for photographs that we've been talking about. So yeah, I think that,
Nikki,
I went to Colorado this summer, and I only shot with my phone. Like, I was on vacation with my family. So it was.
I think that that's a really good point about quality and the different uses when it comes to your brand. You know, we talk about your website, your print, your Instagram, Facebook. We've mentioned Canva before, and how you can manipulate photos in there. Manipulate sounds terrible, but it's a good thing. But you know, you can make them different sizes for Facebook banners and things like that. But are there quality differences if we're talking about how we're going to use it in our brand? Are there quality differences for a website versus your Instagram feed?
I think that any use online, a phone with, one of the newer phones, the quality will be completely fine. Now, you run into trouble when you're trying to print larger prints. I think that most phones print small prints relatively well, newer phones. But any sort of online use a newer phone image will work just fine. With one caveat: you don't want to edit your pictures within you want it to be really light-handed as much as you can with the editing of your pictures, because the more that you edit, the more the file will degrade, and so it will become visibly degraded when you use it online, even online, especially if you're using it like on a website where the image is going to be larger than it would be just on social media. But any kind of heavy-handed editing will start to degrade those pixels, and it won't look as clear and sharp as it did originally. So you really want to try to pay attention to light as well as you can to get your picture as close to perfect in camera, and then just use editing to just kind of clean things up just a tiny bit, or maybe, fix the color, or maybe increase exposure just a tiny bit. So, but otherwise they work great for any kind of online use.
So a lot of our clients are constantly wondering about like budget and things like that. Scott, I think I interrupted you. Go for it.
No, that's fine. My thought was what you were just saying. So you're saying it would be better to take the picture in black and white than to change the color to black and white?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure. I think that I probably would still take it in color, just because I would probably prefer to have the picture in color as the original. And now I'm trying to think about whether I've used any sort of black and white conversion online in a larger than just social media use, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's not going to degrade it that much, is it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think if you're trying to use a picture on your website and it's going to be a really, large screened picture, I would play around with that and see if you can see a difference. I'm not totally sure if you could or not, but I know that I post millions of pictures in black and white on social media, and they are all fine. So I don't think it would be that big of a deal. I think it would be fine.
Okay.
Nikki, Karen's asking about just not editing, and is there any reason to shoot photos in RAW format, capital R, capital A, capital W?
You can shoot photos in RAW format with some. I think that through the Lightroom app, you can actually shoot in RAW. I don't on my phone shoot in RAW. I do on my camera when I'm shooting sessions. I shoot in RAW. RAW is just a format that, like JPEG is a format, and RAW is literally unfinished. So any picture that's shot in RAW requires editing, because it doesn't have like the vibrance or the sharpening or anything that a JPEG comes out naturally having. So, so when I shoot on my camera, I shoot in RAW and I have to edit every single picture. Now, if shooting on my phone, I just shoot in JPEG. And so it doesn't require editing, I guess is your question. Editing isn't required when you're shooting a JPEG. I just think that editing helps to elevate your picture in a way. It provides contrast and a little bit of sharpening and a little bit of vibrance, generally, just depending on what you do in your editing, that I think really makes them stand out from the crowd. And so I think that's generally our goal with our social media, is to make our posts stand out. And so that's why I talk about editing, is really just in that way. I think when you are using light effectively and that sort of a thing with your phone cameras, I think that we can make fantastic pictures without editing. It's just a little added touch that helps, I think. So, but it's definitely not required.
Fantastic. So one of the things, and again, pipe up, speak up, throw it in the chat. We'll catch it. I'm good. I've had brothers in baseball. Anyway, not me. Nikki, when we are thinking about, so kind of one of the last questions or ideas that I know that we come across with our clients, because everybody's budgeting all the time, everything from, we're talking about tripods, we're talking about Lightroom apps, we're talking about other things that we need to do. We're talking about time, budgeting for time. When is it really good to get a professional when it comes to photographs for your brand? When is it time to buckle down and take some professional photos, in your opinion?
Well, always. No, just kidding. No, I think that I think that I kind of look at it like permanent pictures versus timely, more temporal sorts of pictures. And so if I had to choose as a new business, I would probably go towards having a photographer come and shoot some headshots, some really general business pictures of maybe my space, my plant, the exterior, some like maybe of employees interacting with customers, really general pictures that could be put on your website and used for eternity, that aren't going to change. And I think that it's helpful to learn these foundational basics so that you can then take over those more temporal posts or pictures that may be used for social media posts, that may be like, hey, we've got this new product coming out next week, we need some shots of it. You're not going to come bring a photographer in, most likely, for those types of shoots. So I kind of look at it in those, I sort of split it in that way. And I think that those permanent pictures could be used for any sort of printing that you're going to do, again, on your website. And of course, you can use those for social media also. They can always be handy to have. But I think in terms of what types of pictures do I want that are going to be a permanent fixture in our messaging and marketing to our customers. So if I had to draw the line, that would probably be where I would draw it.
That's a great differentiator. What do you feel like, as a professional photographer, what needs to be communicated to you in order to, about somebody's brand, in order to get some of those pictures? So if anybody said, hey, Scott said, hey, come into my studio today and here's what I need you to do. What kind of details do you need when it comes to aligning with somebody's brand?
Well, I like to know who their target audience is, probably the most, more than anything else. I want to know how they interact with their customers. I want to know if it's possible to have a customer come in, or maybe even just have someone come in and pose as a customer, because I love capturing those interactive customer employee types of shots. I want to know like what your, of course, the real basics of your business. What do you do? What are you making? That sort of a thing. And then also, where are you going to use the pictures? Because I think that that's an important communication element is, are these going to be pictures that are used on social media? Are you going to put them on your website? Are they, social media pictures tend to be a little bit more loose and casual, that sort of a thing, than those more permanent pictures. So, but I love knowing who the customer is, how you interact with your customers, and then capturing that if I can. And then of course the product shots, I love to know as much as I can about the products, how they're used, who uses them, you know, like in it, like the dental studio, I don't know, I don't know, but I would assume that perhaps a lot of your clientele may be older people. And so I think that we would want to consider that. And just all of those sorts of things can help me create pictures that will be as flexible as possible for you to then use, you know, in your branding. So.
Absolutely. Well, again, we ran out of time before we asked you all the questions in the world. We will need to work in, I think you're going to need 1.5 hour long workshops from now on, because they are this and more, because they come with presentations and all kinds of great things. But we want to thank you, Nikki, and thank you all again for being here. Again, as a registrant and attendee of the conversation, you'll be emailed a copy of this recording as well as a brief survey that will help us continue to serve you and bring you quality programs. Nikki gets great reviews, by the way, so feel free to leave yours or tell us what we can do better. We love to hear from you, and we love to read every single one of them and always try to improve. Chris, can you tell us where everybody can find us in general?
Sure. So you can find a full listing of our workshops at sbtdc.uark.edu. And you can also click on that QR code right there to get to those workshops and to sign up for notifications, or we would love to have you as a client. Remember, that is complimentary, and we do a lot for our clients. We can cover just about everything. We're also posted on social media, so please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And
yes. And again, Nikki, can you tell us, can you tell us, Nikki, where to find you as well?
Yes, I am at Nikki Toth Photography, both on Instagram and Facebook. That's my same name on both places.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We'll appreciate you all. We'll see you again next time. Thank you very much.